This February 3rd, 2021 meeting of the Board of Adjustment will now come to order. Due to COVID-19 concerns, this meeting is being held virtually. Information on how to participate in the virtual meeting will be posted on the Board of Adjustment website at www.boco.org/BOA. There will be opportunity to remotely provide public comment on the subject dockets during the respective virtual public hearing portions for each item. I'll provide instructions about that when we get to each docket on the agenda. We'll now take a roll call vote for today's meeting. Eric Mouts, present. Scott Rudge.
Present.
Sarah Weavenson.
We couldn't hear you, Sarah.
Sarah, are you there?
Sorry, I said present. Is that working?
Thanks.
Okay.
Yes. Gavin McMillan.
Present.
Mark Bloomfield.
Present.
Before we begin, there are a couple reminders that I want to go over. First, please identify yourself before speaking and speak slowly and clearly. Second, all votes will be roll call votes. Third, make sure you have your video on as much as possible during the hearing. Fourth, please remain on mute until you are ready to speak during the hearing. Fifth, when you begin speaking, please identify yourself as Board of Adjustment member Eric Mouts, or as applicable. And finally, it may help you to keep the participant list open in Zoom so you can see who is speaking. A person who's currently speaking will be bolded on that list. We now have our first agenda item for today, which is the docket VAR-21-0001, the Wint edition setback variance. We have one item scheduled for today's Board of Adjustment meeting. This time I'll take the opportunity to explain the public hearing process. There'll be an opportunity to remotely provide public comment on the subject items during the virtual public hearing portions for each item. The order of the presentation first will be to hear from staff, then the applicant, and then from any members of the public that wish to offer comments. Some people may have signed up in advance and will call on you first. If you didn't sign up for public comment, you may sign up anyway in the chat function in Zoom. Please direct all of your questions and comments to the board. The chair will direct any questions that arise during the hearing to the appropriate party. Once we are satisfied that we've all heard the relevant testimony, the public hearing will be closed and the board will then discuss the merits of the case and come to a decision. Any members of the public will have a chance to speak, even if you didn't sign up from the Board of Adjustment webpage beforehand. Once those signed up in advance have spoken, I'll call for any additional members of the public to speak. If you join by computer, please sign up by submitting your first name, last name, address, and docket number in the chat box to the right. As each person who is joined by computer and signed up to speak is unmuted, Zoom will adjust your participant status so that you speak and can be seen by video. Once you're finished speaking, Zoom will place you in the back of the room as an attendee. If you dialed into the meeting via phone, please raise your hand by pressing *9 and we will unmute you and call on you to provide comment when it's your turn. When it's your turn, the system will request that you unmute yourself with *6. Once you are unmuted either via the computer or phone, or if you've called in, please state your name and address for the record before providing comment. Each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes to speak. A timer will beep at the end of your speaking time. Please do not submit comments or questions in the chat box during the meeting. The chat box should be used for the public hearing speaker sign up only. Please remain on mute when possible. The moderators will mute you if you can see that your connection is a source of background noise. Members of the public will be unable to share their screens during public comment. Applicants, please have your presentations pulled up and ready to go. I'll announce when we're ready for you to present, and at that time you can share your screen. Again, we're now opening the public hearing in docket VAR-21-001. I will now hear from staff. Please present your report.
Thank you. My name is Sean Gambrell. I'm the staff assigned to this project, and I will be sharing my screen here momentarily. And are you seeing my screen now? Sorry, let me swap this. Okay, are you seeing the presentation now?
Yes,
Great.
I am.
Okay, So again, this is docket VAR 21-1. My name is Sean Gambrell. I'm the planner on this application. This is a request for a 3-foot front setback where the required setback is 35 feet to allow the addition of approximately 410 square foot upper story and the addition of approximately 40 square feet to the existing second floor for a total of approximately 450 square feet of floor area, and then the associated bulk and mass in the front setback associated with that. This is at 115 Fowler Lane in El Dorado Springs. It is a approximately 0.38 acre site in the estate residential zone, and the owner and applicant is Susan Wint. So just a little bit of history on this. Some of you may remember this. It came in maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago. The initial docket on this was VAR 19-0004. The applicant had requested a variance to allow a similar amount of floor area, but added to the west side of the structure. You can see that on the 2 upper images there. Then they came in at building permit time with an addition of essentially an upper floor. They'd moved all that floor area up to the top, and a small addition to the existing upper floor. So that came in July 2020. Staff discussed this at length and decided that this couldn't be approved through a staff process. The change was significant enough. The design was significantly different enough that it required a new variance. Because the variance, the initial variance and all variances are tied to a denied building permit. So we went through this process with the applicant, and now here we are with a new variance for this new design. So you'll see much of the criteria review is similar, though there are some differences in this project, which is why it's coming back through this process. So just a quick look at the maps. This is in El Dorado Springs. You can see it's kind of on the northeasterly side of the town site. And it's the last home on Fowler Lane, which is this road here. A look at the public lands, of course, surrounded by, state park and national forest land, county conservation land, which is typical for El Dorado Springs. It itself does not touch any of those properties, but they are in the vicinity. Comprehensive plan, many layers in this area, many resources. This whole area is very densely developed, as you can imagine. So we didn't have any concerns from our natural resources planner over this. The other significant thing is that all of this new floor area is going to be within the footprint of the existing structure. So there's really not going to be any site disturbance or other natural resource impacts related to this new variance. And then in terms of geologic hazards, you can see this is in an area of debris flow and rockfall susceptibility or landslide susceptibility in the area. So that's part of the reason the applicant is looking for this upper story, is to move the bedroom to an area that's less hazardous for rockfall. And I'm sure they'll mention that, but that's part of the underlying reason for this variance. Just an aerial view of the property to give a little better sense of where it is. This is the structure here. You can see it's the last home on Fowler Lane. Pretty distant from neighboring properties. The only other structure is this structure to the south. This is considerably downslope. It's hard to even see this structure from up on the property. So any impacts in terms of visual impact or things like that should be pretty minimal given its location. Probably some views from across the canyon, but I don't think from any of the public trails or anything like that. And the character is in keeping with the neighborhood. So we'll discuss that further during the criteria review. In terms of the variance request, they are looking for a 3-foot variance. Some things to note on this slide. First of all, the 35-foot setback is here. This is the front property line. So the entire structure is located within that 35-foot front setback. Not an uncommon situation in El Dorado Springs. The other thing to note is that this is the property line here, and portions of the structure do cross the property line. The structure was built in the early 1900s, probably unaware that they were crossing the property line. So we do have some specific conditions of approval based on the structure crossing the property line. You'll note though that none of the new floor area is requested over the property line. That's not something we'd generally allow anyway. So just a circumstance to keep in mind as we look at this project. Here's some photos of the existing structure. What you can see is this old log cabin construction, and then there's been some additions over the years. Currently, there's no connection between the upper floor and the lower floor. It's all through an exterior staircase. That's again another part of the reason for this variance is to essentially provide additional living area that doesn't need to be accessed through an exterior connection. The other thing to note on this is it's a little bit hard to see here, but you can see how steep the slope is back here. Again, all of this area within the 35-foot front setback, a very steep slope. And here I am standing up on the slope, looking back down at the parking area. You can get a sense of what the slope is here. It's very steep, enough so that, you know, most of those 2 floors of the house are within the slope between the front and the back. So I'll look at the new floor plans just very quickly. What you'll see here is a new upper story that's planned. I'm sorry, it's a little hard to see on these this reduced scale here, but essentially you have a new upper story with a staircase, and the downstairs area, just a small little bit of new floor area around this living area, basically just to kind of rebuild the wall supporting the upper story, and then the staircase as well. This is all actually happening within the footprint of the existing structure. So very small on the existing upper floor and then adding a new upper floor. In terms of elevations, this is the new look of the structure. You see kind of a more traditional design with gable roofs and some more kind of traditional windows compared to the previous variance request. There was a revision, and the applicant can talk a little bit more about this. This came in after referral, but prior to the staff report being posted, that involved basically this area here, taking this gable roof out and putting a shed roof on and changing some of the glazing. In subsequent discussions, it sounds like that may not be a request. So I left this in because it was in as part of the staff report. So we can discuss that after the applicant presents, but this may not be a consideration anymore, just FYI. I didn't consider this to be a significant modification. I didn't think it changed any of the criteria review for the variance, but I'll let you guys determine that. In terms of referral comments, nothing super significant. Engineering review had a few things related to construction and an access improvement and maintenance agreement. Also, wildfire mitigation will be required. The applicant is comfortable with those requirements. And then the local improvement district fees that will need to be paid prior to building permit because they're adding a bedroom and a bathroom. We did hear from 9 adjacent property owners. All were either strongly in support or had no particular objection to the application. So looking at the variance criteria, this is in section 41202B2. Criteria A, there exist exceptional or extraordinary physical circumstances of the subject property, such as irregularity, narrowness, shallowness, or slope. As I showed in the photos, the subject property is steeply sloped except for the one small area adjacent to the road, which you could see in some of those photos where essentially is a parking area, even where the structure is itself is pretty steeply sloped. And then once you get outside of that front setback, the slope is extreme, and doing anything in those areas would require, you know, significant earthwork. So it is I think an exceptional property. Because of these physical circumstances, the strict application of the code creates an exceptional or undue hardship upon the property owner. Again, that front setback of 35 feet and the slope at the rear of the property effectively remove any buildable area, and a strict application of the code wouldn't allow for any new construction on the site or any remodeling of the existing structure. And the applicant has made a case that, you know, there are some safety concerns with this structure as it is, that really some of these renovations are necessary for health and safety. So the the ability to make or the inability to make those, I think would be an exceptional or undue hardship. The hardship is not self-imposed. The subject parcel was created and the residence was constructed before the introduction of the estate residential zoning district and its accompanying setback requirements. The applicant purchased this property with this already existing, wants to make some changes to the property for health and safety, and I think that this hardship is not self-imposed because of that. Criteria D, the variance, if granted, will not adversely affect the use of adjacent properties. The proposed construction that's requiring this variance is distant from adjacent structures on 3 of the sides. On the 4th side, it's down a steep slope and is well screened by vegetation. The other thing to note is that Fowler Lane is currently effectively blocked by the building. So the variance isn't going to impact anyone's access across Fowler Lane or any property access through Fowler Lane. It's essentially already obstructed. So I don't find that this variance will adversely affect the use of adjacent property. The variance will not change the character of the zoning district in which the property is located and is in keeping with the intent of the code and comprehensive plan. This variance, it's for a small addition on a small structure at the end of a 1-lane road. Pretty tucked away spot. I don't think this will have any impact on the character of the estate residential district in El Dorado Springs. As I mentioned before, there's likely some visibility from slopes across the canyon, but the character of the proposed construction is really consistent with the scale and character of other residences throughout the town site. And it's a small addition. I don't suspect any visual impacts of any significance. And finally, the variance, if granted, does not adversely affect the health, safety, and welfare of citizens of Boulder County and is in accordance with the comprehensive plan and IGAs. Property is located at the end of a private road. All the other structures are distant, and the variance will not impact health, safety, or welfare of anyone besides the applicant, which should be hopefully impacted in a positive way. No changes are proposed for the areas of the structure that are located off of the parcel. And again, this will allow for increased safety of the occupants. So all of that said, staff does recommend approval with the conditions. These are the conditions that are detailed in the staff report. I won't read through all of them again, but I'll leave them up on the slide here in case people want to discuss. So that's what I have. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I had a question about condition number 5. It was my impression from reading the packet that the roof replacement would be within the 3-foot setback. And so I just wanted to make sure that no language needed to be added to that condition, that it would be for health and safety modifications in addition to the approved work as part of this variation.
Yeah, so I spoke with the chief building official on this. So typically eaves that extend into a setback, that's allowed. And however, we do say here that no building permits or only those building permits for health and safety will extend. And he said essentially an eave on a roof does qualify as a health and safety permit. Essentially, it keeps moisture off of walls and keeps things like mold and other, issues that might be caused by infiltration of moisture from happening. So they would have no problem, approving the new roof with this condition of approval.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
Are there any?
This is
further
Scott Rudge.
questions?
Yes, Eric, I'm sorry. Scott Rudge, Board of Adjustment. Sean, I'd like to know your perspective on the comment submitted by El Dorado Artesian Water, especially as it impacts recommendation number 8 or condition number 8. But in general, I'd like to know your all of your impressions of the comment submitted by El Dorado Artesian Water.
Sure. So it's a kind of a unique situation in El Dorado Springs. All of the roads there are owned by the spring company, essentially. They're all privately owned property with easements to cross to the parcels. So our typical engineering response language, which included the AMA question, isn't necessarily a good fit. And so I did speak with them earlier today as well. Their essential concern is that with any of our approvals, there needs to be some kind of agreement between the county and the applicant about maintenance of the access. So they said they're comfortable if we want to change that recommend or that condition about an AMA. And I'm trying to find which one that is. Maybe it actually isn't on. Maybe that was just for your information. So anyway, they're comfortable if you want to add a condition that says, essentially that some agreement needs to be made between the property owner and the county engineering staff regarding the access, as that needs to be shown by before the building permit is issued. That they would be comfortable with that. In terms of the parking, in terms of 8, the intent of this one is that essentially they're trying to say that access needs to be maintained. So the primary thing they'd like to see all construction vehicles parked on site. If they do need to be parked in the road, typically we would say park them to one side so they're not obstructing traffic. Because this is private property, they're comfortable modifying that to say that if they need to be parked on site or permission needs to be given from the property owner to allow parking off site. So those are both things that the board can add, and I have no objection to that.
Uh-huh. So if something like all appropriate easements must be gained or obtained from El Dorado or Artesian Springs, that would be sufficient to cover their objections, both for the access maintenance, or there was some talk in their comment about improvement of the access, which I presume meant repaving or paving of Fowler Lane in some way. That all that has to be done with the cooperation or easement of El Dorado Artesian Water.
Yeah, I think that would be satisfactory for engineering and for me. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's all I have there.
All right. Are there any other questions for the staff? Okay. Hearing no further questions for the staff, I'll now invite the applicant to come forward and make their presentation. Under Board of Adjustment bylaws, the applicant has 10 minutes to make their case for the variance. Do we have the applicant here?
This is Anna Milner, staff. I do believe the applicant's present. David, are you, and Susan, would you be able to unmute yourselves, please?
Oh, yeah, okay, I just did that. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, David is on here, and I'm Susan, and he's going to give a presentation about the house and the design and all of that.
And just before you begin, I have to apologize. This is an issue that I should have brought up at the beginning of the hearing, but I wanted to disclose to everybody, both the county's aware of the issue, but applicant, I don't think you are. One of the other Board of Adjustment members, so first of all, in my professional life, I'm an attorney, and I have been retained by one of the other Board of Adjustment members, Mr. McMillan, in relation to some of his private business as an attorney. And so I have that relationship with him outside the context of this hearing. I don't see any reason why that would prevent me from making a fair and impartial judgment as to your variance request. But I want to be sure that I disclose that situation on the record and make sure that I note any objections and that we deal with them. So if anyone has any objections based on the fact that I've done legal work for Mr. McMillan, now is the time to voice them.
No.
I have no objections, but Scott Rudge, Board of Adjustment, I'd just like to make another disclosure that I'll say I'm past friends with Mr. Steve Anicombe, who also submitted a comment to the board this afternoon. Too recently for me to step back and recuse myself. It's been a long enough time since I've known Steve intimately that I don't actually even understand his relationship to the property, other than his letter said he lived there for some time, for 2 years recently. And I don't know what that means. I don't think the fact that I had a relationship with Mr. Anicombe many years ago will affect my position in this case, but I wanted to disclose that and give opportunity to object to my participation.
So just to make sure we have a clear record here, on behalf of the applicant, do you have any concerns or objections based on the information that was just disclosed by Mr. Rudge and myself?
No.
I'll ask the county, and I don't know if it's Mr. Gambrel wants to address this, or Ms. Sanchez, or someone else wants to address it, but is there any objection on behalf of the county based on the information we've just disclosed?
The county doesn't have any objection. This is Kim Sanchez.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez. Again, I apologize. I should have dealt with that at the outset of the meeting, but I forgot. So we've dealt with it now. I'll now turn the floor over to the applicant for her presentation.
Okay, David Kahn is doing the presentation and he's on here, I think.
Yeah, I am.
He is.
Oh, there he is. Okay. David's the architect. And so he's going to talk about the house, the design, and then I'll speak to any other questions or issues.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thanks for this opportunity to speak with you today. And also thanks to Sean for a really good presentation. I think I'm going to be echoing a lot of what he's already presented, and I hope not to be too redundant, but I hope to add a little bit of information. At this moment, I'd like to share my screen, if that's possible, and let me know if that seems to be working.
Yeah, I see it.
You see it? Okay. Okay, great. So this is just an image showing the extension of Fowler Lane to Sue's property at the end of it here, and shows a little bit of the neighborhood context, some of the nearby houses, and then the hillside and the hogback that comes down from north to south and basically terminates in Sue's property. As Sean mentioned, this proposal here was submitted in 2019 and was approved by the board, and it was primarily a 240 square foot addition to the west side of the house that would be a 2-story entry and staircase into the dwelling, and it was approved, thankfully, at that time. Then when we started to really think about, putting together the building permit and really refining the design, we responded to 2 separate comments from referral agencies, from the Rocky Mountain Fire District and also the County Natural Resource Planner, to try to keep the functions within the existing footprint. And Natural Resource Planner Ron Flax asked in his report, why couldn't the stairway be constructed internal to the structure? So we took those comments to heart, and we also became more and more concerned about rockfall off of the hillside. And this is a picture of the driveway entrance to Sue's property, and you can see some of the big boulders adjacent to the property that have fallen down that hillside over the years. And then this is a neighboring house close by, just down the hill from Sue's, and you can see the size of boulder that we're talking about that do come down that hillside and cause real damage to people's structures and health and safety. This is a picture of Sue pointing up from her house up to the boulders up above the hill, and then a graphic that she made that explained where she sleeps, right at the bottom of that hill. And so for these reasons, we really thought, okay, let's not build a 2-story entrance here where my cursor is showing the, the existing, was it going to be out here? Let's put those functions up higher so we can get them out of harm's way. And we also looked at the existing context around the neighborhood. And I'm going to show you 4 of Sue's immediate neighbors. And we began to see this pattern of a basement that was built partially into the hillside with a primary living space and then a smaller bedroom above. And you can see that pattern pretty much existing all around the neighborhood. And this is also on Fowler Lane. And there's a bottom floor that's down at the truck level. So it's sort of steps back up the hillside with those functions. And here's another one just nearby as well. Sue's house is just right up in here. You can see the ground floor level built into the hill, main living level, and then bedrooms above. Now these houses that I'm showing you are quite a bit larger actually than what Sue's planning to do. And I just wanted to point out sort of a comparison of what was approved in 2019 compared to what we're doing now. So here's a sketch of the 2019 proposal showing that 2-story entrance here that natural resources and fire were concerned about. And then a bedroom, which is at ground level, pretty much exposed to potential rockfall. Dining area also exposed to potential rockfall. And so what we did was we removed that 2-story entrance from the west side and kept everything within the footprint. And the functions that are beyond ground level will be a living area and a staircase and a powder room. And the staircase goes up to the 2nd floor addition. And then in terms of the south elevation, you can see this is that 2-story entrance on the left, a living, what was going to be a bedroom here. And what we're basically doing is not building that addition here and instead doing the bedroom upstairs, bedroom bath upstairs. And then by the way, this design really retains the existing south facade. I mean, we're not going to change that at all, except for to upgrade it for health and safety reasons and for poor construction, things that are falling apart. But we're going to keep the roof slopes the same, shed roof the same, the gable the same, window placement the same. So we're really trying to stay in harmony with the existing building and sort of pay tribute to that history. This is a west elevation. You can see this is that 2-story entrance. And you can see here where we've kind of added a gable roof and a living room and then put the bedroom upstairs. This is that staircase here. So that becomes like a protection from the rockfall down the hill by not having a sleeping space there, but instead having a staircase there. And then this is a picture of the site plan. And you can see that by the standards of El Dorado Springs, Sue has a very large lot. Like I live on a lot this size. I'm also an El Dorado Springs resident, but my lot is about this big. And she has a very large lot and she's going to really stay within her footprint. And she's a pretty small footprint person and she really wants to be efficient with resources and be respectful of the site. The 3-foot, oops, I'm sorry, excuse me. The 3-foot setback is right in this area. And what we're doing actually is we're having more than 3-foot setback. We have 3.8 setback on the western side. And then because the building is slightly angled, there's a 4'2" setback on the eastern side. So we're going to go a little bit beyond that 3-foot requirement. And happy to do that. And this is the area where that 2-story addition had been before. And I just want to briefly sort of take a look with you at the floor plan. This is all the existing footprint, all of this that you see. And just sort of renovating the kitchen, living room, a little dining area here with the entrance, and then staircase with a powder room tucked underneath it. And then that staircase leads up to a modest 2nd floor addition with a bed area here, closet area here, and a bathroom here. And that's the entire second floor, roughly 450 square foot. Actually 411 square feet. The total square footage that we're planning to be adding is 456. And then just the elevations, again, looking at that west addition, Sean's correct. We're just going to keep with the existing gable that we had for the living room and not change that. We may add like a triangular window above these, but that would be all that we would do. Otherwise, just keeping it in this form. This is identical to the way the house looks now. Like if you saw the house right now, you'd see the stair coming up, the garage, the deck, and this is the sort of historic piece that fronts south and that you see primarily that we're going to keep. And then the rest of it, we're really just trying to be in harmony with the typical forms that you see in Eldorado Springs: hip roofs, gable roofs, diversity of roof forms, different functions broken up into small pieces as opposed to one large monolithic structure. And that is really what you see when you're in Eldorado Springs. You see, these types of articulations. So this is from the side where the rock fall comes. So this is that whole staircase area that would be sort of a protection against rocks falling into the house. And then this is that south elevation showing the living room and then the bedroom, bathroom addition upstairs. And I think that is about it for me. If you have any questions, though, please let me know.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
This is Board of Adjustment member McMillan. Perhaps this is a question for staff as well as the applicant. So what is in the submitted plan set in terms of that west elevation? I think it was the west elevation that had gone back and forth. I just want to clarify, if we were to recommend approval tonight, which one we'd be approving? This vision right here?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions?
I just had a comment from BOA member Webenson. I just wanted to thank you for resubmitting as a variation because the criteria for approval are very different when it's an appeal versus a variation. So I think you've done a nice job. I support staff's recommendation that it did require a new variation just because the bulk is in a different place, but it makes a lot of sense why you chose to do that. So thank you.
Further questions or comments for the applicant? All right, hearing no further questions from the board for the applicant, we will now call for public testimony. I have in my records here an indication that we have received a couple public comments. Do we have any members of the public that would like to speak?
This is Anna Milner, staff, Chair Mounts. We do have 3 members of the public signed up to speak, starting with Mr. Alan Brown.
All right, Mr. Alan Brown, are you there?
I don't see him. Mr. Brown was with us, and unfortunately, I'm no longer seeing him on the line. So
Okay.
we can move to Mr. Doug Larson.
Mr. Larson, are you there? I see Mr. Larson. Mr. Larson, you have 3 minutes. Could you please state your name and your address for the record?
Okay, I might run a little over, so I think, may I use a couple of Kathy Schoenfeld's minutes who are signed up also?
We do normally allow members of the public to pool minutes if they wish to do so. So yes, if Ms. Schoenfeld wants to give her 3 minutes to you or some portion of them, then she's welcome to do so.
Okay, we'll see how I do. My name is Doug Larson. I reside at 31 Fowler Lane in El Dorado Springs. In addition to being a neighbor on Fowler Lane, I am also the CEO of El Dorado Artesian Springs. And our company owns Fowler Lane to the south and the property to the north of the applicant's property and also the property to the east. So, you know, it does kind of affect us. I did send a writing, but I was late, so I wasn't sure if you got it. So I just wanted to go through the items very quickly that I noticed in the staff review. Item 1 is the addressing the fractional part of the existing building that encroaches onto Fowler Lane. Staff has indicated that there is no additional expansion of that footprint in the proposal, and if that is the case, then I have no problem with that. The second item was we'd been contacted earlier, several months ago, about by XL Energy wanting to do underground burying of the electric lines to the property across Fowler Lane. I'm not sure if that is now included in part of this project or was abandoned or was done. And I just didn't see them doing it because they've been all over the place lately. We have standard, procedures for granting XL Energy additional easements for the underground utilities. So if those are still desired, please have them contact us. The construction process seems to use our property for staging. We have accommodated several other construction projects throughout the community, typical temporary construction easements, and have done so at nominal fee and tried to fit the terms of the project. The application states that there are 4 parking spaces located on the applicant property. You did already bring up with the question of parking the vehicles on our property during construction. If those can be included in a temporary construction easement, if you need larger area for staging of the project. Also, if you prefer post-project completion, we can maybe make an accommodation on some other parking license that might be more permanent, so long as it doesn't impact the access of Fowler Lane, which doesn't have a road going past the project, but is still our property on the other side, and we'd like to get to it. Staff, and this was brought up earlier, also the recommendation for the access improvement and maintenance agreement. Those are owned by our company as well, all the roads through town that was mentioned. And I did recommend, and maybe you already did this, setting aside this requirement as a condition for granting the variance. Our company has no objection to such agreements in general. And if the condition is required, I am certain we can offer some accommodation that may be acceptable to the applicant. But at the current time, we are seeking a more comprehensive solution throughout the community rather than a piecemeal one-off agreement with individual landowners. So we would ask that until a comprehensive solution for road maintenance can be reached throughout the community, that this condition be removed. I did catch during the applicant's presentation or staff's the mention of a sprinkler system throughout the addition. I'm not sure of the pressure requirements for that, and don't know if our water system through town, of which the applicant subscribes, provides enough water or pressure to manage that. So maybe they can talk to our operator and see how that fits. And I just want to mention that over the course of our company's management nearing 38 years, we've made scores of accommodations of all types, benefiting virtually every property located within the community. We believe we can accommodate the needs of this project also. So as long as it fits with some of those terms, things that caught our attention, we have no objection to the approval of this process and the variance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Larson. Ms. Schoenfeld, do you have anything you would like to say, or have you given all of your time to Mr. Larson?
I give all my time to Mr. Larson.
I'm sorry, could you repeat yourself? That we couldn't quite hear you.
I gave all my time to Mr. Larson.
All right. So are there any other members of the public? It doesn't look like it from what I can see here. Are there any other members of the public here that want to speak? All right. Hearing no further public testimony, we will direct any final questions to the staff or applicant or the members of the public that have spoken that the Board of Adjustment may have. Does anyone have any final questions?
A question or a comment?
Questions from the board to either you or you as the applicant or the staff or any of the folks that have spoken.
I could comment on something that Doug was wondering about with the sprinkler system. I don't know if that's appropriate or not, or Sean could actually.
So let me ask you then, because the appropriate mechanism is for the board members right now to be asking the questions. I'll just go ahead and ask you, applicant, is there anything that you would like to say in response to Mr. Larson's comments?
Yeah, I just would like to thank him for expressing his concerns, and I am on board with all of that. And regarding the sprinkler system, Sean and I have agreed it was a mistake, them stating that we need a sprinkler system. You only need one if it's over 4,800 square feet. So that's not going to apply. So I guess that would be it.
Okay. Does the staff have any final comments or points of clarification?
No, we just had that conversation today. In the for your information section of the staff report, which isn't binding, it says that a sprinkler may be required based on the size of 4,800 square feet, and she doesn't reach that 4,800 square foot threshold, so likely not required. I don't know if there may be other things that would trigger sprinklering. I'm not an expert in that regard, so I don't want to say carte blanche that that's not required, but that section of the staff report is in error, and so just want to clarify that.
We've heard from the applicant and from staff, and so at this point I'm going to close the public hearing, and we will turn to board discussion of this variance. Board members, who wants to start?
And sorry, this is Kim Sanchez. Before we do that, can I ask the applicant to stop sharing his screen, please, so we can see the full commission? Thank you.
Sure.
Am I supposed, is that me? Am I supposed to do something? I don't know.
I got it, Sue.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Scott Rudge, BOA member. I'd like to move immediately to conditional approval, unless another board member would like to raise a point of order to have further discussion.
Any of the other board members want to have any discussion, or are we comfortable moving to a motion?
I support moving to a motion with the conditions that we discussed.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion then, again, Scott Rudge, BOA member, to get conditionally approved docket VAR 21-0001, the Wint edition setback variance, with conditions 1 through 7 recommended by staff, which I won't repeat in this motion. I'm excluding condition 8, as I believe that will be worked out between the applicant and Eldorado Artesian Springs corporation.
Do we have a second for that motion?
I guess a point of clarification on the motion. We had discussed requiring that all existing easements be maintained. Is it just the one between Artesian?
That's a great, Scott Ridge, BOA member. I think adjudicating private easements between a private company and a private citizen, it's beyond our scope. That's at least my feeling. So I didn't want to add that as a condition for the approval of the variance. I'm presuming that if the applicant doesn't obtain the proper easements from the private corporation, that will result in other actions that are beyond the scope of the Board of Adjustment, in my opinion.
And sorry, Sarah Weavenson, Board of Adjustment member, in eliminating condition number 8, which is what I think I hear you saying, we would be removing the requirement that the vehicles must be parked on site or to one side of the street, which does seem to be a good protection to try to keep the vehicles on site. Or are you modifying that one?
Scott Rhodes, BOA. I'm not modifying it, Sarah. I'm just removing it because it's a private road and there's access considerations of the private corporation. I'm again presuming that it's going to be subject between private parties and not part of the county's purview in that case as to how the vehicles are parked. I'm entrusting the parking situation to the local community. So I think it's appropriate to remove it altogether in light of the information that's been presented.
And
So shall I repeat my motion?
so we have a pending motion. Do we have a second for the motion?
I'll second the motion. This is BOA member Weavenson.
All right. We now have a motion and a second. So all in favor of the motion, please say aye. This will be a roll call vote. Eric Moutz, aye. Scott Rudge.
Scott Rudge, aye.
Sarah Weavenson.
Sarah Weavenson, aye.
Mark Bloomfield.
Aye.
Gavin McMillan.
Aye.
Wonderful. Docket VAR 21-001, the Wint edition setback variance is hereby passed. And that concludes today's Board of Adjustment meeting.
And
thank you all
Chair,
for your
if I
time.
could, this is Kim Sanchez. Just one quick announcement before you adjourn. I just wanted to announce that today was actually going to be Board of Adjustment member James Greer and Carrie's last meeting. Their terms end at the end of the month. Neither of them, unfortunately, were able to make it to today's meeting, so I can't thank them publicly, but you can expect the appointment of 2 hopefully new board members coming up. The new county commissioners will be making those appointments in coming weeks.
Excellent. Thank you. I look forward to meeting our new members here in the future. And I thank you all for your time and attention. This concludes today's meeting of the Board of Adjustment. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Eric.